Do we do a roll call? No. Great. Good morning, everyone. At this time, I'll call the Crow Wing County Committee of the Whole for May 20th, 2025 to order. First up is Tim Bray, Reed Teesey, and is Brad here today? I don't see
He
Brad.
was planning on being here. I don't see him yet.
Okay. The floor is yours.
Excellent. Well, I'll start off. Let's see, Amber, if you bring up the letter. So on April 1st of this year, the city of Baxter wrote me a letter, and I believe it was directed by the city council to take a look at the area. This is the letter. You go to the third one there. Talking about this area of Baxter, which is Mapleton Road. It's to the east of the two schools, the elementary and Forest View. Can I have the pointer, please?
Tim.
Just to orientate you, this is the Isle Drive and Cassav 48 roundabout. Here's the new elementary school. This is Maple.
Excuse me, if that's the new pointer, there's a button on there. It should be green instead of,
The new pointer is the one on the.
Oh,
Oh,
The fancy.
hold on to your eyeballs.
okay.
whoa.
Oh, yeah, okay.
I'm sure there's a warning on here. This is not, do not.
Burning a hole in our screen.
Okay, so is this more visible online? I'm assuming. So, okay. I got you. Okay, so this is the Isle Drive and 48 roundabout. This is Mapleton, headed out towards the county line, Cass County. This is the elementary school, and this is 371 here. So on April 1st, going back, the city of Baxter wrote a letter to me, I believe directed by the city council, to request a delay of one of our projects. And why we're here, and maybe different from other requests for stuff, it was a request to kind of do something different than the promise that we've made to the public in this area. And I thought it was important to maybe come before you, talk about that, give the opportunity to the city of Baxter and Sourcewell to talk about the plan for this area. Almost since the first day I got to Crow Wing County, we've been talking about this area with Baxter. And prior to my arriving here, this road, this is our GIS map, and this is a platted roadway that the city of Baxter and Crow Wing County officials back in 2004 platted. And so we've been talking about it since then. And one of the challenges with the area is that this is the green outline is a contiguous piece of property. And one of the previous owners was Potlatch, I believe they're the original owner. And early on, they were looking to advance the construction of Mapleton Road along this curve here to make the property one big parcel that was not split by County Road or Mapleton Road. And we've been talking with Baxter and different owners throughout the years, and Sourcewell is now the owner of the property. And I think they just acquired it,
Yeah, in March.
in March. And so they're doing some planning around that, and that's what precipitated the conversation with the city council in Baxter to formally, the government agency, formally requesting us to delay our project as they kind of figure it out, what they're going to do with the property. And that's why they requested a delay, because it could be, and Reed will jump in a little bit, talking about their plan for this area. If we moved ahead with our 20-year fix on this, on the yellow area, only to have Sourcewell come and request to make this one big piece of property as they build it out for what they plan for, it'd be a waste of taxpayers' money. So it's a logical request for a delay, but we wanted to have an opportunity to talk about how long the delay was based on your planning, Sourcewell's planning. And so we can either have you accept that request to delay it, do nothing until they're ready, or we could put a shorter term fix on it, knowing that maybe it's 5 to 8 years down the road that we put a thinner overlay, a different kind of treatment on it for a project that's in 2026. That's why this is really kind of important to talk about, and a hot button item. We could put a different type of fix on it that only is expected to last on the time horizon that they're having. And so we wanted to get them here and be able to talk about that. And maybe, and also we'd ask the city of Baxter to come here because they're also interested potentially in this area. They've talked about this area right here, which is owned by the city of Baxter. This side is the city of Baxter. This side is now Sourcewell. And what their plan is too. They've talked about a city center there. They've talked about other opportunities, moving the city hall there. There's some things like that. So it's their plan and Sourcewell's plan that kind of drives, and the timeline associated with that drives kind of the decisions we need to make for the project in 2026. Have any questions? I hope I teed that up
Yep.
pretty good.
Yeah.
Commissioner Coring?
So, question, I guess I know you, the county engineer, have been kind of a stickler on promises made with the 5-year plan. I mean, but if you feel like delaying this, I guess I have no problem with it. I guess what I'd like, and I've mentioned this multiple times, I guess when you take County Road 48 or this one here, that are actually inside of a city, I guess to me, it reminds me of Pequot Lakes. If we still had that where the 371 went through Pequot Lakes, we turned that over to them. We made a deal with them. As you talk about the future infrastructure, are you having the conversations about, what can we do to turn this over? Because it probably makes sense for them to be plowing the snow there. And anyway, that's my question.
We have, Commissioner Coring, thank you for the question. We have been talking almost since that day one, 16 years ago, about the potential of turnbacks for in different scenarios. We thought about making County Road 170 Cassaw 48 and swapping those, but we've never really come to an agreement on that. What we did in Pequot Lakes, we turned over $4 million to them too, so it comes at a cost, and we just have not advanced those to real serious conversations. Almost every time we get together, kind of joke about that we need to get that going, but it's never come to fruition. If that's something that the county board wants to advance, we can continue to have those conversations with Baxter. So that's really, currently, that's not on the table and part of this
How
necessarily.
long is this, mile-wise, what you're talking about here?
Oh, I'm
mean,
not
we-
certain,
huh?
maybe 4 miles
4 miles?
I don't even know that it's that long to be.
to the county line. No, this right here,
And
very
it-
short.
It ends at the county line.
Yes, County Road 170 goes to
And
the county line.
Road, what did you say, Dan?
170.
County Road 170 is 4 miles, or whatever it is.
Yeah.
I can get the exact length, but it's a substantial length.
And does the city of Baxter end at the county line, or? It does? So County Road 170?
I don't think it goes
no.
all the way.
Okay.
I think it ends by Forest View, doesn't it? On the
On Mountain Ash,
No, it
no,
goes
there's,
west further.
there's much more to the west. I can get,
That goes all the way to the county line.
it does.
Yeah.
So that's a perfect example. If we got County Road 70, or 170 is 4 miles in the city of Baxter, I don't know, it doesn't make sense for us to even have that be a county road.
That's an initiative, we've talked about it, just kind of at the city and county engineer level, and really is not advanced into a long-term goal or anything. But we do have a long-range transportation plan that we are working on, and that's certainly something that can be addressed in there and advanced with the city of Baxter if they wish, just what the intentions are of the two entities.
So a question for Reed, so, obviously I don't, I'm sure Sourcewell does all kinds of good things, and I know they do. And I guess I'm kind of snotty towards them because they've taken away a lot of good employees here, and they can pay more than we can pay, and so that kind of pisses me off. But I guess is it a big secret of why now that you're buying land, Sourcewell's buying land? What, I mean, I know you're taking over the world, but what is this?
No.
What's up with this?
Happy to explain. Commissioners, good morning. I'm Reed TC, Director of Facilities for Sourcewell. I know a lot of you from working here in the past, but to Commissioner Lee and Lubke, nice to meet you. Nice to meet you both. Commissioner Coring, to your question, Sourcewell recently procured the properties as Tim had mentioned. We bought those in March in conjunction with an initiative that we have at Sourcewell, the Wonder Trek Children's Museum. You may have heard about this from years ago, I believe. I've looked at Mike and asked Mike a little bit about this, but we've been working on Wonder Trek as an organization and partnering with them for 5 or 6 years or even more. The idea of it has probably been growing since longer than that. So, but recently, through partnerships with the previous owner, Consolidated Telephone, they had previously owned those properties. Wonder Trek had an initiative to try and get up and moving by the end of this calendar year. So Sourcewell had the capacity right now to support the Wonder Trek project. So the three parcels that Tim had mentioned are the parcel in the northeast, parcel on the southeast, and then this westerly parcel here that it does cross Mapleton Road, as Tim had mentioned, and follows that plat where the curved roadway would go right here. We have no other plans at this point for any development in that area. It was just one grouping of parcels that we decided to move forward with and to support the Children's Museum. You may have seen that they broke ground on that earlier this year. They did some tree clearing and are starting to work on their outdoor trails and outdoor outfitter studio for their project.
On property that Sourcewell owns?
Yes, so we have an agreement with them, or working on an agreement with them for a long-term lease of this property. As a nonprofit, partnering with a unit of government does open up funding for them. So we're getting into some strategic relationships with Wonder Trek.
I thought somebody's mentioned something about the city of Baxter moving there, or possibly a new city hall,
Correct. Yeah, correct. So,
something partnering with?
yeah, I'm not speaking on behalf of the city of Baxter. I had thought Brad was going to be here to speak to that. I'll let him speak to those terms, but I know that through their studies that the city of Baxter does own right here. They do own this parcel here. I think it is one of their potential future city hall considerations. I don't think they are ready to make a decision at this point, and I would defer that to the city of Baxter on where they're going with it. Our goal really in this, Commissioner Coring, was just one, these properties open up some future considerations for Sourcewell and any of the other regional partnerships that we may endeavor into in the future. We have nothing teed up for any of the other parcels at this time other than Wonder Trek. And again, we've been working on that initiative for 5 or 6 years.
Okay, and then I would just say, Mr. Chairman, that obviously, we got a letter from the city of Baxter. I think it's important for us to work with our partners, whether it be federal, state, city, whatever, so if the city wants to do something and the county engineer concurs with that, I guess I'm okay with delaying that. If you think it's a good idea, I guess I'll defer to you, Tim Bray.
Well, it's in really tough shape, and anybody that drives it knows that it's used up, and it's at its end of its service life, the current surfacing, so something needs to be done. And I think it's important, what Reed just stated, is that there is no plan beyond Wonder Trek right now. They're looking at all options. They're a brand new owner and are getting in their planning process. And the request that came from the city of Baxter first came from Sourcewell to Baxter to do this. So they responded to Sourcewell's request to delay it.
Yeah, and Tim, if I may, just out of clarification, the request would be not to delay the County Road 170 project in its whole. It's only to delay or to reconsider the solution being proposed for the section. And if Amber, if you could back up to the overall map, the previous one there that Tim had with the green box, maybe one more. Yeah. So the request would be for the city of Baxter and the highway department to consider from the Jasperwood intersection here on the north, because this is all fairly new. Tim, I believe this was done with the school, or maybe even before that. This is new, fairly new pavement right here. The old pavement starts here and goes down and ends right here. So the request would be to consider an alternative solution if the timing makes sense for just this small L section right here, and then for us to work on that over the next 12 months or so and come back for,
Have any, in your deep pockets, have any money to help us with a Band-Aid fix so that we can maybe put a Band-Aid on it for a while and before we do a whole fix?
I don't know how the funding mechanism works
Mike-
between
Mike,
the
you're
city.
the financial guy, you got any money?
You know,
Answer it.
it's our roadway, and
Pardon me?
it's our roadway, and I think the decision today is, do we move forward with the do nothing, put something on that is longer lasting, like a 5 to 8 year fix? Think about inches. You have 3 inches of pavement, or do you put on 1 inch to last you 8 years, which might, within the next 5 to 8 years, meet up with their planning horizon. So it's coming of age about the time that they're ready to build some of this other stuff. Like this road is also platted in there, so that's the logical extension of that through that area. And that's really the decision.
Is this close by where the Amazon facility is going to be, or is it? just-
Amazon is to the west.
Much further west.
Pardon me?
Amazon is currently operating to the west, quite a ways down, County Road 1. Well, it's off of 210, but
This is adjacent to the 371. Like the 371 is what you see in the bottom right-hand corner there, Commissioner Coring.
Oh,
And then just up to the north of 371 is the 48 stoplights. So this is right along the 371 roadway.
Only right after the
this right
river.
here.
Pardon?
Right after the river.
Correct, in between the river and the 48
Yep, yep.
stoplights.
So
this would-
Amazon's like way over here.
Yeah,
okay.
way over, yeah.
And you have that pointer.
It's way over there.
Mr. Chair.
Yes.
Tim, in your 2026 plan, you have already identified funding sources for this piece with the full reconstruction, correct?
Not full reconstruction on this part. That would be just a surface treatment and an overlay. The reconstruction of 170 is past Mountain Ash, which is over there, is going to be a reconstruct. And I just, if I take a second there, when the request was before the city council, the Brainerd Dispatch reported a delay of 170, and I had several people call me and say, hey, not the reconstruct, right? Just to clarify for those that might be watching and all the commissioners that we're only talking about this, the 170 reconstruction, this is from the ground up, all the way out to the county line, is still a go. We're going to do that. We're moving forward with that. That is, we're not talking about delaying that. It's just the yellow area and the mill and overlay here. That's it. That's all we're talking about.
So the project is already in the plan and already has a funding mechanism that's already assigned with that aspect of it. So the idea before you, or the conversation before you, is, are you okay with Tim having the authority to maybe delay a little bit on the promise or revise the promise that was made for just this portion of that road at that point?
My question, Tim, and to Reed, is we haven't talked about the timeline.
Correct, yep.
You know, so I don't know that Sourcewell and the city really have a timeline that would apply. So when you say a thin layer that'll go 5 to 8 years, we don't know that that would be adequate. Or it might be done in a year and then we wasted money on that thin layer. So can you kind of clarify that timeline for us?
Sure. Yes, Commissioner Barrows, thanks for that. Correct, we don't know what timeline we may be talking about here. The request to come up with an alternative solution is to buy us some time so that before, Tim, I believe you come back to the boards usually in April every year to approve your next 5-year highway improvement plan, right? And Tim, you were just here last month and approved your 25 through 29 plan. The goal that the city of Baxter and Sourcewell have talked about is that in the upcoming 11 months that we will work on a clearer picture for Tim so that he can more accurately put a placeholder in a capital plan like his highway improvement plan for when some solution might be. I don't know if it's going to be a curved road, that curved road in the future or some other solution in the future, but it's for us as units of government, Sourcewell and Baxter and Crow Wing County, to work together to try and maximize and not spend taxpayer dollars if we don't have to on a solution that may get changed in a very short, I say very short, but in a short window, like a maybe 1 to 5 year window.
Reed, if I may, just the challenge with that is we're designing the plans now when we're making those decisions, and by the time April comes around, the plan is likely for this project to be let. And so we need to know much sooner than that on what that fix and that yellow portion is going to be. So that decision timeline is much shorter than you stated.
Right. I guess, Tim, my question would be is you're already planning on this easterly section here from, you said Mountain Ash, where you're going to reconstruct west, but this easterly half of County Road 170 will be a mill and overlay, right? That's what you already have planned, correct?
That's correct, but it's in the same plan. We're doing the
I
projects
guess my
together.
ask would be is, would it be possible to provide a design alternative for just this section so that, obviously you need to have timing work out, and we'd be happy to be partners with you and try to get as much information in your hands as possible when it comes to having to make a decision on that future project, that next year's project. But to have a design alternative there so that we can give you some more information on what the next 1 to 3 years might be, so that gives you the info you need to make that decision on what solution you would put down.
Yeah, we'd like to have the decision or what you're planning for so they can make the decision whether to keep it in the
Correct.
plan or not, or what it looks like. Is it 3 inches of overlay, or is it 1 inch of overlay, or is it nothing?
And
That's really what we need to know.
Yeah, and obviously, as working here in the past, we know how much our capital plans mean to the county, and so we completely respect that and want to make sure we're helping as part of the capital planning activities of Crow Wing County. So providing the information as soon as we can possibly provide it.
I think it's unfortunate, we have a 3-legged stool here, and we only have 2 legs sitting in the room, and that Baxter isn't here to represent their portion of it, because they will have some cost share that goes along with this curve. And so I think that's an important piece that we're not hearing. And I don't think, I'll speak for myself, and I know that I'm on the Sourcewell board, so I'm a little careful on what I say, but I support this just from a traffic control area, having driven that and ridden my bike out there, and I know what that road looks like. I think a curve would be more appropriate. I think it certainly is advantageous to bring the piece of property into one ownership instead of splitting it, and then you have a piece of property that can't be developed. That's counterproductive for city development. So I think it's unfortunate that the city of Baxter isn't sitting here and being able to because they're the ones that are going to probably drive the project more than Sourcewell will. You're just asking for us to agree with this, but Baxter's going to have some skin in the game in terms of finances. And I think that it's important to remember that as a board, that they aren't here talking about what they can commit to next year or the year after, or when that would fall in within their financial plan.
Yeah.
Just to address the future and cost share, so what you see here, it's really faint, but we've been talking about potentially when the curve comes in, there's a connection back to this. And our cost share policy is that would be development driven. So yes, the curve would be beneficial, but it does, there's no immediate need for that right now. The introduction of the curve has always been because of the development potential in this particular area. So in accordance with our cost share policy, anything that's development driven would start off at 75% the city, because we work with government agencies, not Sourcewell, and then they can work with Sourcewell to figure out how to get the 75%. And the counties is 25%. So when and if this does what you kind of see in this faint line, they extend this down, this road hooks up with an intersection here, and then the curve is built, that cost participation starting off would be 75% the city and the developer together, and 25% the county. And we've been clear about that in, you know, the meetings we've had, that when eventually that gets done, development driven, and the county's portion is reduced because of that.
So Tim, what would be the life expectancy of a 1-inch application versus a 2-inch application?
Well, probably that 1 inch or 1.5 inch is 5 to 8 years because of the surface that's underneath. I would expect even after 1 year, it's those cracks and all those deficiencies that are out there right now, you'll start to see them. They'll be tighter and it'll be less bumpy, but you're going to see a lot of crack sealer out there and that kind of stuff. You know, we do 3 inches to hopefully last 20 years. So, you never know. It depends how people drive it, the types of vehicles that drive on it, or winters and that kind of stuff. So
I think we've seen an increase in traffic. I don't know what the counts are out there, but coming from southern Cass County, using that back road to get into Brainerd or head north on 370 or south on 371. So I think that's the questions I had. Commissioner Coring, you had a...
So, question for you, Tim. So, let's say this wasn't Sourcewell. Let's say it was Jimmy Johnson that owned that land and he wanted to do the same thing. Would you have came before us with that, or
if Jimmy Johnson
as much priority as it would with?
If Jimmy Johnson was compelled the city of Baxter to write us a letter and they take it on, I would treat him the same. Certainly, I'd be coming here.
But Jimmy Johnson would have to, he'd have a cost share portion, just like Sourcewell would, in essence.
Right, and for the future project with the curve and stuff like that, development driven regardless of who it is. And just like we worked with the school, we use that same cost share policy when the school was doing some work on the elementary, introduced a couple new intersections. We started off with 75-25 split with the city of Baxter. We did not get into an agreement with the school district directly, and then the school district and the city of Baxter worked out how that percentage worked out.
Well, I hope this is the exception to the rule. I hope that when we put together a 5-year plan, we don't have townships or different cities kind of coming in and saying, hey, wait a minute, you know, because it just kind of blows up the whole plan then, if that's the case. I suppose this is kind of this seems so iffy. I mean, it could be 3 years, could be 5 years, could be never. You know?
Correct, yeah.
And so, I don't know.
I wanted to, Tim, I don't know, and I think Brad and Trevor had done some work from the city of Baxter, but the distance of mill and overlay here, that inverse L essentially, you know how much approximately a mill and overlay for that would cost? Like your proposed cost is what? Is it?
I don't know.
And you have any idea? I think
It's not a substantial,
Right.
Substantial amount.
I want to say at one point I had heard, and Brad is on his way. He did text me. He apologizes. He did have an emergency come up, but he is on his way right now. That I want to say at one point they had done a calculation that that's about a $70,000. It's calling again. It's about a $70,000 fix or solution proposed
it's
right
probably
now.
under
And so if we
100,000.
were to go with an alternative solution, could it be 25, 30 or, you know, or more for that solution? So I guess that's what we're weighing here is do you invest the full cost of it and knowing that it could be a never, but it could be 3 years from now, and then we come back and resurface it, and is that an okay investment? Or do we want to be more mindful of the money we're investing into something where we do have, we are starting some conversations about some development in that area, so. And again, it is in conjunction with the city of Baxter and what some of their initiatives are as well.
Well, from my perspective, I would be willing to delay it. I agree with Commissioner Coring. We don't want this to be an everyday option for townships and cities, but for this one, I would be willing to delay it, put a one-inch layer on there, make it work for 5 to 8 years, and that's the timeline that Baxter would have to work, and Sourcewell work within to get this done. Then we can incorporate it into our 5-year plan and be ready when that time frame is up. I realize that 5 to 8 is kind of sketchy because it could deteriorate in year 5. Might be good to go to 8, but that kind of gives them an opportunity to figure out what they're going to do with this property, and probably more than Baxter than Sourcewell. I mean, Sourcewell can sit on it, but Baxter needs to come up with the money to have that 75% participation in their plan. So that would be my position at this point.
Yeah, Commissioner Coring was looking for a recommendation, and although it did not necessarily give options or suggest options about an interim fix, I took this as do nothing. My recommendation would be to do that, to give that 5 to 8 year planning horizon, have something out there that will last that long, give them the time to do that, knowing that potentially they could never be built.
Then do nothing.
Rather than do nothing. And then I feel that we're delivering on the promise. We said that the road surface was going to be there. I think the assumption is we're going to do it, 20-year fixes on everything, but we're still delivering on a smooth surface and improved surface on that area. It's just that it's not expected to last as long as we would on other mill roads.
If we do nothing, Tim, and it continues to deteriorate, there comes a point where you can't put a blade down to clean the road because the road will disappear when they're clearing it. It gets that fragile, I would say, at some point.
Right. I think the option to do nothing really is not an option, because in 5 to 7 years, it's already in terrible shape. And in 5 to 8 years, it's going to be really bad. And it might require then a total reconstruct. I mean, there might be enough salvageable there now. So my recommendation is to focus on that 5 to 8 year fix, a thinner overlay, continue to deliver a promise to the public, smooth, improve road surface, and then ask that the city of Baxter and Sourcewell continue your planning and keep us, informed, continue to invite us to the meeting so we can then start to react and plan for the cost participation that the county would have in something much larger, like building the curve and the introduction of an intersection.
So just a note, welcome Administrator Chapolis. We now have 3 legs to the stool. So Commissioner Coring?
Yeah, so question to the city administrator, Baxter. What is the city's position? I mean, is this the city's position, or is this Sourcewell coming to you and saying, hey, can you send a letter, want to delay this? What is your reasoning on this? I mean, I was just explaining before you got here, the county is very planful. And we have a 5-year plan, and this project is in the 5-year plan. And I just get concerned that, obviously we want to work with you. I think it's important. But this kind of blows up the plan that we promised to deliver to our constituents. And so what's your reasoning on this? I guess I don't really understand.
Sure.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. I apologize for my tardiness. I had an emergency that prohibited me from being here on time, and being that it's busy season, I had no other members of the leadership team to come in my absence, so I apologize for my tardiness. Commissioner Coring, that is a very good question in that regard. The curvature of Mapleton Road has been in concept and idea. It was platted in 2004. The goal or objective was, as development occurs, that road would be, the curve would be installed. We've had the same owner of that property since 2004, that being the former paper mill. They weren't actively trying to develop the property, they were trying to sell the property. The curvature is in our long-range transportation plan, and it was always when development warranted the curvature. It was explored in 2019 with the Baxter Elementary being constructed there. However, potlatch, as referenced as being the third leg, was not in favor of incurring the assessment that would be incurred with the city taking on the project back then. Right now, we have a property owner that is actively looking to develop the property, wants just a period of time to be able to do the due diligence that they need to do to determine how to maximize and provide the best use and development of the property. We understand that there is a promise that has been made, and we're cognizant of that, but we also believe that the same individuals who the promises were made to would also criticize the spending of the money for only 2-3 years for it to be torn out.
So moving putting the curve in, now where the curve would be, that would be a county road, correct?
Correct.
But you'd have cost share, if that's what you wanted, to have that moved. You're gonna come up, Tim just said that your share would be 75%.
Correct.
And you're okay with that?
Correct.
I should say, is the city council okay with that?
We were comfortable and were willing to pull the trigger, provided that we had that third leg committed to paying their share.
Okay.
As you know, the city assesses the road improvements to benefiting property owners, and with every project, we gauge how many are in support and how many object to that, and being that the only property that would have been benefiting would have been the cities and the adjoining property owner, we didn't feel comfortable in pulling the trigger at that point in time.
Mr. Chair.
Commissioner Lee?
Mr. Bray,
Yes.
so the portion that would be affected by this delay is roughly a third of a mile, I think maybe half a mile, correct?
About that, maybe a little bit less.
What would be the added expense to the county if we delay this?
Added expense? Delayed it completely? Like do nothing?
No, I mean delay it and give it the lipstick that you're talking about.
If we were to put the one
In the
inch
short? in
Yeah,
the
the
short-
the 1 inch for 5 to 8 years.
In the short term, it would not be an expense to the county, it might be a less expense. We're putting less bituminous on that section of roadway. Long term, it's just more the potential for increased maintenance, once that thin overlay wears out.
So we would go in and redo the, no, we would leave the existing structure as it is underneath the pavement, is what you're saying.
I'm sorry, I didn't understand.
We're not,
Wait,
we're,
hear you, Jamie, can you?
we're not just, you're not going to redo any of the support or structure underneath the pavement then, correct?
No,
So it would just be the 1 inch of overlay on top.
right,
And if we went ahead with it now, we would be moving it over to where the curve is, correct?
no. No, we're just talking about resurfacing it in place. The curve is like years down the road, depending on the planning. Does the planning that Sourcewell do and their utilization of that property?
So the 2026 does not talk about this future realignment?
No, it does not.
Okay.
No, it's just the what to do with the yellow, the L there.
Yep.
Yeah, both plans are keeping it in its current location right now. It's just one is doing it as proposed in 2026 or doing a shorter-term fix for that small section in 2026 in conjunction with the rest of the project, so.
Okay.
So, one more thing, Brad, if the city will take over County Road 48 as a city street, and then I'll support this then.
Understood. However, as you know, I don't have the authority to
I know it.
to
I'm
accept
just-
that.
I'm just,
But if that's something that the
it's a
commission
wish,
wants.
it's a wish thing for me.
No,
Wish.
understood. Understood. And I do want to, and I failed to mention is that On the west side of that curve is city-owned property, and it's one of the sites that's being considered for City Hall. And so there is not only the development that is going to occur on the Sourcewell property, but there is very likely the potential of the city property being developed over the years too, which is another heightened interest of the city in the curvature.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
I would look at the fact of lipsticking it, I'll use that as a term, because it's not really doing, it's making the road better for the people that are using the road today and will be using the road for the next couple of years or 3 years until this vets out. If it doesn't in those 3 years, then we'll look at coming back to it or, get it on our promises and go back and do it if it all falls through. But the way it looks, there's enough work that's been done ahead of time. And you said in 2004, you were even looking at that curvature, that I don't think we should spend the money to do the full promise, but I think the lipstick would be something I could support to make sure it's drivable for the people that are using it now. That's my opinion on that.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, so do I see consensus for Tim to work with the city in this regard in figuring out what the best short-term solution would be?
Yes. Yes. There's consensus. So,
Okay.
thank you very much, gentlemen.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, and again, I apologize for my tardiness.
Fine.
Did you find them? Chair? No. Okay.
And Mike, we didn't bring you up here. We could have had about a 4-hour financial report.
I gave you your chance to come up here and see if you had any money for us.
No, I do just want to thank the board and thank for the collaborative efforts between the city and the county and Sourcewell. Just here really supporting Reed as a senior leader at Sourcewell, and got a lot of respect for the county and the city, and continue to look forward to those conversations to make sure that we make the best decisions possible. So thank you for your time.
I'll see you tonight.
Yep.
Yep. All right. Next on the agenda is land use ordinance update. Chris?
Good morning, Mr. Chair, Commissioners. I just wanted to give you a quick update on where we're at with the current land use ordinance update. Just to kind of give you a timeline of where we're at, we started this process back April, the month of April. We did a 30-day comment period. Then we went on April 15th to a committee of the whole update where we gave you an update on where we're at with the ordinance. We had a work session with the Planning Commission and the Board of Adjustment on April 17th. And then yesterday, May 19th, we had a public hearing here at 10 a.m. with the Planning Commission Board of Adjustment. And then we're here today for a committee of the whole, just to give you an update on where we're at. So does anybody need an update on some of the key changes to the ordinance, or are we comfortable with that? Okay. We did receive 3 comments were submitted. They're in page 222 of the packet this morning. They were basically related to Article 6.3A, the proposed change to the article that would allow a commissioner to appoint their member to the Planning Commission Board of Adjustment, but would not be required to appoint from their commissioner's district that they cover. So those were the changes that were the comments that were received from the public. And then at the meeting yesterday, the Planning Commission made 2 separate motions. I just want to clarify what those 2 are. The first motion that they made was they recommended denying the amendment to Article 6.3A, as we had talked about the appointment of the county board, how they appoint the member to the Planning Commission Board of Adjustment, and that was approved with a 3-to-1 vote. And then they made a second motion approving the other amendments, so they supported all the other changes to the ordinance, and that recommended approval from the Planning Commission Board of Adjustment with a voted 4-0 on that. So this is slated to come to you for final review on May 27th at the regular scheduled meeting next Tuesday, and looking at that point for action on the ordinance amendments as it's been proposed, and then based on the recommendations from the Planning Commission Board of Adjustment. So I'd be happy to answer any questions.
So Chris, if I can ask a question on Article 14, which is the residential, rural residential.
Yes.
And in that article, we're talking about commercial may be allowed in these districts. So your RR1, the 2.5s, the 5 and the 10s, it may be allowed.
With a conditional use permit would be the vehicle to do that, so,
Okay.
yeah.
So, and I know that it talks about for commercial being along a federal, state, county, or township road.
Right,
We stay out of the cities,
correct.
and we probably stay out of Crow Wing Township
And Irondale as well,
and Irondale.
correct.
So why would we, it just seems like we're opening up the commercial, why wouldn't we just make all those other areas that are come under our purview commercial?
Well, we do have, you know, we do have quite a bit of commercial zoning across the county. And, you know, we have that, if you look at our land use map, we have, you know, quite a bit of that. The key why we wouldn't want to change all of that zoning to commercial is that when you look at it when you're more of a residential district, a conditional use permit is a very specific to a type of a use on a property. So take, for example, maybe you've got a piece of property that's, say, along a county road, and somebody comes in and wants to change that to a commercial use because maybe they want to, like, say, maybe they want to like make log furniture or something along those lines. And they say, I want to be a zone commercial. We might say, well, we'd rather have you probably get a conditional use permit for that because you might want to do log, you know, furniture on that today. Let's say it's 10 acres. And then tomorrow you decide to sell it to somebody and they want to put up a used car lot there. Might not be the right spot for a used car lot, and that'd be a permitted use in the commercial district. So when you have that commercial, it just opens up a lot more opportunities for commercial that might not be compatible with the uses in the area, where a conditional use permit is very specific and tied to the property. So like if somebody were to come in and say, I want to run a home business because I want to make log furniture, it is for that specific use on that specific property. Now, if it were to get sold down the road and somebody were to come in and say, I see that you do log furniture here, I now want to start selling used cars, we'd have to have a different conversation because that conditional use permit is very specific to the use on that property, and that's why they're such an important tool that counties have at our disposal, is to allow some commercial in that residential district that makes sense, but we're concerned about opening it up completely, allowing any type of commercial activity in there. So that's the reason why we do that.
So help me understand this. If I'm in a residential area, commercial can come in there. But if I'm in a commercial area, you can go in there as a resident, but you know that it's commercial property and there will be development around you that's commercial.
Correct. Right.
You don't know that in a residential area until
Right.
now, when we're changing this ordinance. Why? We're giving commercial
So
kind of a free hand to
can
develop wherever they want.
what section of the ordinance are you referring to specifically?
Well, I read it in Article 14 is where I started seeing
Okay.
some of this.
Can we go to Article 14 of the ordinance, please? So we
Page
can-
75. Yep.
So you're looking at 14.1C?
So you could look at any one of those, you're adding the interim use, but we're allowed a,
Yep. So if you were to go to Article 10 right now, which is the land use tables for the county, that specifies what uses are allowed in what districts. So if you're a certain zoning and a certain use, is it an allowed use? Is it a permitted use? Is it a conditional use? Is it an interim use, or is the use not allowed? So currently, right now, that just clarifies what's already in the ordinance in Article 10. So in Article 10 right now, we already have certain types of commercial activities that are allowed in residential districts with either conditional use permit or that interim use permit as referenced in the article. So we're not changing anything, we're just clarifying that there are those types of uses that are allowed in those districts.
so in a residential area, why wouldn't we make it, if we're going to allow it, interim use, which then goes away when that owner goes away?
Yep,
Where
correct,
conditional use stays for the life of the property.
correct.
And so we could clean up some residential areas if we needed to. Under a CUP, we can't do that.
Correct. The CUP does run with the property, and once it does go from property, as long as the conditions and the approval are being met, that runs with the property. So I think that is definitely something that we could look at, down the road, if that's something that we wanted to change some of these conditional uses to interim uses. I think sometimes I think folks get a little concerned about that because there might be some investment in some of these properties when they have a conditional use permit, and then unknowing if they were to sell it to the next person, they have to come in and get another permit, say apply for it again, and the unknown of not having that consistency. That's one of the reasons why people prefer a conditional use permit versus an interim use permit, just for the consistency sake, so.
To my point exactly, you take a chance with that interim.
Right.
That
Yep, absolutely.
resident on each side of that commercial doesn't get that option. Their property might devalue because of the commercial development in between them.
Right.
So we aren't giving them consideration, we're giving the commercial property consideration.
Well, and to be clear, when anybody applies for, like, say, a conditional use permit, where we provide notice to the neighbors within a quarter mile, we publish it in the paper, we have a public hearing, and then we have considerations in the ordinance that must be considered by the Planning Commission Board of Adjustment before they make a decision. There's a finding of fact criteria that they have to follow, and some of those issues you're bringing up, some things that they have to wrestle with and decide, is this the appropriate, is that use appropriate in this area, and what are some potential, conditions that might be placed on that to offset any negative impacts to to adjoining or neighboring property owners. So there is definitely a process, at least for people to participate, so it doesn't happen unilaterally.
So the other thing is, if we already have commercial, when I'm reading this, we aren't adding commercial, we're adding interim uses in most of these cases when I read this document.
Right.
If we're in the process of changing it, why wouldn't we have considered getting rid of conditional use permit in residential areas and just have it interim use so that there is some protection for the adjacent property owners?
This is the first this discussion has been brought up, to be honest. This really hasn't been discussed before, so that's probably why it hasn't been brought up. So what we're trying to do with this ordinance update is to select the uses that we think that are the most potentially have the biggest impact to neighboring property owners. So some of the things that we're looking at would be an interim use, would be like a outdoor venue for like a wedding venue, those sorts of, changing that to an interim use, adult uses to an interim use, those sorts of things. So we did, and we already have like gravel pits are an interim use and that. So I think we've definitely made some changes to this that would, maybe address some of the issues that you're bringing up, but maybe, if we need to go a step further and go from a conditional use permit to an interim use permit on other uses, I think we could definitely have that, conversation.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Chair, I got a question.
Chair Lupke?
When you say conditional use, if, let's say it's Betty's Beauty Shop and it's being used in a garage in a residential area, and you've granted them a conditional use permit because they've met all the qualifications, let's say, how long does that conditional use permit stay on that property? As long as it's operating in the business? Let's say the business isn't operating. How long does it go before that conditional use goes away?
The conditional use permit doesn't go away, so the conditional use permit
stays with it.
Stays with it is recorded on the property, it's recorded with the property records, and so it stays with the property title, and it transfers upon ownership, and so, and we don't have anything in our ordinance that has a timeline on conditional use permits, as far as, say, if a use, some counties have something in their ordinance, they'll say, if this use has been discontinued for more than a year, this conditional use permit, the conditional use permit is expired and is no longer valid, and would need to reapply for a new conditional use permit.
I'm familiar with that in a city where if it was used and not used for that period of time, the conditional use went away and they would have to reapply. If you set it up as a conditional use, does that mean that when you appraise that property, you appraise that part of the property as being the conditional use for taxes?
We definitely make sure the assessors, our assessor team are aware of when conditional use permits and plats and that sort of thing, and are aware of it, so that it was definitely be taken into consideration when doing their the valuation and classification of the property.
Yeah, okay. That's the only question I had.
Chris, can you address, a couple of things, but can you just go over, just to refresh my memory, what we're proposing and on the how many unlicensed cars you can have
Sure.
on your property, because this actually was prompted because of an incident in my district.
Correct. So we have right now, we have a current ordinance that only allows you to have up to a maximum of 2 unlicensed vehicles on your property. Anything beyond that would be in violation, and if you're located in the agricultural forestry district, you could apply for a conditional use permit to operate a junk salvage yard. And so what this ordinance proposes would be to say that in the areas that are zoned, our rural residential districts and in our agricultural forestry district, to allow up to a maximum of 10 junk cars based on your lot size. So if you have so everybody would have two unlicensed or inoperable vehicles regardless of their lot size. So if you had a 1 acre lot, you could have up to 2. If you had 3 acres, you could have 3, inoperable vehicles for up to a maximum of 10 if you had 10 acres. That's what's being proposed in the ordinance right now.
But if you had 80 acres and all of a sudden you had 50, obviously that's a problem, and they got to
That
come
would-
in and if they want to do that, they can come in and go through the process.
Depends how the zoning is.
Okay.
So if it was zoned agricultural forested, they'd have to come in and apply for a junk salvage yard at that point. And so that would definitely be an option that they have. But right now, the limit is 2 regardless. So if you're in the shoreline district, which is the zoning around the lakes and the rivers, streams, in that area, you're going to be limited to 2 unlicensed vehicles regardless of your lot size in the shoreline district. It's going to be our non-shoreline zoning areas that would have that potential of going up to 10 unlicensed vehicles, depending on your lot size. So if you have 2.8 acres with this, you get 2 unlicensed vehicles. If you have 3.1 acres, you'd have 3. So we're not rounding numbers, it's just an even number based on your total acreage, would be the total cars you
And I
get.
think this is actually trying to make it, I think it's make it more workable. You come out to Roosevelt Township and tell somebody you can only, and they've got 300 acres and they've got 3 unlicensed vehicles, they're in violation. I don't know how we're going to enforce that.
Correct, and one of the provisions that this ordinance update makes too is just requiring them to meet the setbacks. So they have to meet the right-of-way setback, which is 35 feet, property line setback at 10 feet. So at least
Now they don't have to.
we don't have any requirements, the ordinance for that right now. So, and if we do have any of these issues where we have, these unlicensed vehicles or inoperable vehicles and people are unwilling to comply, then our only avenue at that point is to give it to the county attorney's office and let them follow their legal channels that they have to compel compliance.
And then one other thing I want to address is, can you go to page 27? Is it on 27, Deb? Okay. This was brought forward by me in changing that, and I want to just explain why. I've got Sue Maskey, who I think is an excellent person on the Planning and Zoning Commission. She worked here, how many years did she work here? Gary, do you remember? I think it was 20, pardon me?
15 to 17, I think.
Yeah, I think so. Anyway, Sue's my appointee on the Planning and Zoning Commission. Her and her husband are trying to sell their property down in Roosevelt Township. They own property up in Pelican Township, I think it is. And she just told me that, eventually we're probably going to move up there. And I said, well, do you want to stay on the Planning and Zoning Commission? She says, I love doing this. And I think she's very, very, very qualified. And I think that's what all the commissioners would want, is a smart, qualified person to be on the Planning Commission. And I just thought that this change would be appropriate so I could continue to have Sue serve, or whoever I want to serve. I think about my district, which is the Mill Avenue is kind of the boundary. So if you think about it, on the right-hand side is my district, so let's say I had somebody that lived on the left-hand side of Mill Avenue and a very qualified person to serve on this committee, and we'd say, no, you're not, because you're not from the district. And as far as somebody saying that, well, I need somebody to represent my district, I am the representative, and all 5 of us are each representing our district. I would hope that a Planning and Zoning Commission member is not making different decisions when they're in the district they live in. All they're doing is carrying out the ordinance that we're approving right now. And I can tell you that if my person moves up there, she will remain my person, and you 4 will have to remove her. And if you remove her, I will not bring anybody forward, and we'll be serving with a 4-member planning commission. That's how strongly I feel about this. That's all I've got to say on that. I don't know what the big deal is about this. It should be the most qualified person representing Crow Wing County, not representing a district. That's my job. That's all I've got to say on that.
Thank you. Commissioner Coring, anybody else?
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner Lupke.
when that was brought up, I did do some homework on it, I did some research on it, and Chris did also. Of the 87 counties in Minnesota that do planning like we do it, none of them have an at-large appointee that do it the same way we do it, where we do a joint planning commission and board of adjustment. State statute is really kind of ambiguous in the area where it talks about that. Actually, I could not find anywhere in state statute that it says the appointee even has to be from this county or this state in order to be on that. And so I definitely think that that person should be from the district that's served. It has worked for this county since we've put it in place, and I think, was that 2009 when we merged those 2 organizations
Yes, I believe
together?
so. Yep, 29, I believe, yep.
Yeah, and for, in my district, as that's where the letters came from, I would be hard pressed when all of a sudden a decision is made in my district and I didn't even appoint the person from the same district to serve. I think it would be disingenuous to the people saying that of the 15 to 16,000 residents in the district I serve, I couldn't find somebody qualified enough to serve in my own district for that position. That's kind of where I come from it. And the other thing is if a decision is made in the district and the appointee is from another district, I don't know how I'd answer that when it says, you voted for this to allow somebody to be served from a different district to serve our district, and you won't do it for your own, but you will allow it to happen. You must be endorsing it, you know. And I think that's the questions I would have coming to me in regards to that. So I think what we have works, and I don't think any one person is that important in a county of 67,000 that we have to change a rule that has worked since 2009. So that's my response.
Thank you, Commissioner Lubke. Anyone else?
Thank you.
Next step is to bring it to the board.
We'll see you on Tuesday.
Yep.
All right.
Thank you.
Very good. Thank you.
I think Melissa's coming up next with the one watershed, one plan for the
Okay.
pine.
One watershed, one plan, Pine River.
The Pine
We
River
got a lot
watershed.
of one watershed, one plan, so.
How many
Make
one
sure we're on the
watershed,
right
one plans do we have in Crow Wing County right now?
Mr. Chair and members, yes, there is 5 major watersheds that'll be going through this process within Crow Wing County. The last one to start is the Mississippi Sartell, which is kind of the Platte Lake area, which has a very small percentage of Crow Wing County, but they're just starting this process.
Yep, so we have 4 approved plans right now.
Right.
Mr. Chair and members, thank you for the opportunity to be here. Melissa Barrett, Crow Wing Soil and Water Conservation District. I also have over there Supervisor Joanne Weaver, who's served on the policy committee as a part of this planning process, and then Jarrett Derlick, who has done a lot of the work with the individual landowners. So, Mr. Chair and members, we are just here just to provide you a quick update on the Pine River Comprehensive Watershed Plan. So if you remember, I believe it was about 2019, the county board approved this comprehensive watershed plan. This was the first watershed plan that we worked on in the county. And as a part of that process, we're working with the Board of Water and Soil Resources to do a 5-year update. And so we've had opportunity to start that process. So in 2024, we kind of brought the policy committee together as well as some of the technical and advisory committee members to kind of review what we've done. So we kind of put together a summary, which was provided in your packet, of kind of the progress we made towards our watershed goals. And so just a reminder that it's not just us alone, it's the landowners, the partnerships, the lake associations, and other local government units that have been a part of this process. So I just wanted to highlight a few of the things that we were able to work on. We completed about 51 projects related to more like the shoreline restoration. We worked with the Crow Wing County Highway Department and the City of Cross Lake and did some major projects along CASA 66 that were able to help us reach some of our lake goals. The Crow Wing County Highway Department also participated in a lot of the chloride trainings, and then Cass County also was able to upgrade their equipment to do brining like Crow Wing County does, and that is a great asset because they also provide brine to townships in Cass County as well. And so we also did a lot of work to what we call as protect, basically work with landowners to permanently protect their land through Sustainable Forest Incentive Act or through acquisitions. Crow Wing County took on some big acquisitions in this watershed that helped meet our watershed goal. So that's just some of the big highlights in the last 5 years. And then as we did the review process, obviously we know a lot more than we did 5 years ago regarding, some of the things that we're tracking and how we're looking at these watersheds and these different activities. And so most of our changes are pretty minor. They're just, in essence, makes it easier for us to show progress towards these goals. And so in Appendix K that was provided in your packet, the gray kind of highlights the different items that we're going to be changing. So most of them are pretty minor. Some of the things we did switch a little bit and incorporated them into other goals. But a lot of the items were more just changing our potential outcomes, or what we're looking to is as tracking acres versus percentages. And then one of the things that we did include in our original proposal was trying to have people maintain their septic systems at like a 90% compliance rate. We found out that that's really tricky because there is no kind of requirement for people to do that, and there's really no way to track that. We know in Crow Wing County you have a very high compliance rate for septic systems due to the turnover of properties. And so we want to focus more on the education component of trying to educate people on what they should be doing with their septic systems, because there is so many septic systems in this watershed and wells. And I think the other thing is we did keep all of our lake goals the same, our prioritization process the same, and we increased some of our phosphorus goals for some of the lakes that are significant to the county from a tax base, such as big trout, the whitefish area, just due to the development pressure. We know that through COVID, so if you think about this plan was done prior to COVID, that number of people that have requested addresses in this watershed has increased, and development continues to be an issue. And so we wanted to make sure that we still have these activities available for landowners as a priority to continue to protect these lakes for the county tax base. So we have an open comment period until June 5th. All the information is on Crow Wing County's website under watersheds. People can fill out the online forum, and we'll be taking their comments till June 5th, and we have a public hearing scheduled for June 17th up in Bacchus to review those public comments as well as the state agency's comments, and then after that we'll be submitting that to the Board of Water and Soil Resources for approval. We will not be having to come back to the county board because you guys have already approved this plan and it's considered a minor amendment. If you would like us to come back with that, we can definitely do that, but as of right now, we're not required through the state process.
So Melissa, clarify, if you would reach 100% on all these goals, do you just amend them then and go on to additional acreage or phosphorus, whatever the goal we're talking about?
I think it's gonna depend, you know, some of it is like the priority we picked was a lot based off of the water quality data of what lakes were declining in water quality as well as sort of that economic significance. So there's other lakes that we could then sort of focus on if we reach these goals in these other areas, because we didn't pick all of the lakes. There's over 500 lakes in the watershed, and I believe there's, I can't remember the number off the top of my head, but it's roughly about 30 that are within the prioritization, so we could pick those or other resources within that plan once we reach these goals.
So when we have these plans, and I know from my experience that we look at the ones where we can have the biggest impact, so the low fruit. Once we eliminate that, do we have to go back for additional funding? Because we've already presented that to Bowser and other government agencies. Or does it just go on hold, which then potentially we backslide on what we tried to achieve? What's the process going forward once we've achieved all these goals?
Okay, Mr. Chair and members, thank you for the question, first of all. That's a good question. So the way the funding works is it's all based off the legislator. So every 2 years, there's a new appropriation of money, and some of that's based off the money that the state has available through the Clean Water, Land, and Legacy Amendment. Then that money is distributed throughout the entire watershed, so the amount can vary. And so based off that is kind of what we have to work with landowners or projects within these watersheds. And so one of the things I guess I would like to consider as a part of this, at least for Crow Wing County, other areas might be different, is that there is a lot of work done by the DNR right now to look at shoreline degradation. And about every 10 years, we're losing like 1 to 2% or 2 to 3% of all our shoreline. And obviously we see that here in Crow Wing County. The planning and zoning sees this a lot, where redevelopment occurs or additional development has occurred along that shoreline. And so the goal of this plan is to kind of keep up with the loss. So maybe in some areas you would be able to actually obtain that, but I feel like at least with the resources that are in this specific watershed, the Whitefish alone, to try to maintain what we have is a very heavy lift.
Mr. Chair, I could also just put on my hat from when I was working for the Board of Water and Soil Resources. There's not enough money that comes from the state to fully fund these plans to get them completely implemented. So, I mean, there's always going to be a gap, even though, I mean, we have more funding, I think, for watershed planning than probably any other state across the country as far as how much we're putting into this and the consistent funding. But the reality is that there's not going to, we need voluntary compliance. We need folks to do things to do the right thing because it's the right thing to do and not because there's always funds to really get the plan completely implemented. There's federal dollars, there's state dollars, there's local dollars, that. So the reality is that I think if we were to get these 30 lakes completed and all the projects we wanted done on them, I think that would be a monumental task. So I think, where do we go, after that? When we get there, we'll probably have a plan for that, but right now I think we're just trying to work really and with the lakes that we've already prioritized and to get those completed. And these are only 10-year plans, and so after 10 years, we'll have to re-up the plan again, and then you have to remember that the Clean Water, Land, and Legacy Amendment expires 2034, and so if that doesn't get renewed and back up again, for that 3/8 of 1%, the funding for the watershed, in 2034, I thought that used to be a long time away, but it's coming pretty quick. It's less than 10 years away now. So that's another thing just to think is just the funding source is that as well.
Very good, thank you. Commissioner Coring?
Thank you. Either Chris or Melissa, how much money and staff time does it take to put together, and if you don't know the answer, to put together a plan like this? And the plan, I'm guessing, well, I'm not guessing, it's identifying things that couldn't help with clean water, correct? Kind of like the project up at Serpent Lake. That's kind of one example, right?
Yes, that is correct. I guess, Mr. Chair, members, just a clarified question. Are you talking about just the plan amendment or the full comprehensive plan?
The whole plan, how much money and how much staff time? If you don't know, that's fine, I
Yeah.
just kind of curiosity.
So typically, we have hired consultants, so it's based off the consultant's time and effort. Typically, in the past, the Board of Water and Soil Resources have given around $200,000 to hire a consultant and do this process. So it is an expensive endeavor, by no means. There's a
How
lot
do they- how do
of
they-
money invested in this process.
Sorry about that. How do they identify these different projects? You know, the consultant, or is there input from townships, or how does that work?
Mr. Chair, members, great question, thank you. So we do follow kind of a similar process that the county would do with their comprehensive plan that you guys went through, where we set up a technical advisory committee and also invite township citizens and other government entities to be a part of those discussions. So, you know, as a part of this amendment process, we did contact all the townships in the cities to let them know of this amendment, but they are notified through that process and encouraged to participate in forms that they can.
Mr. Chair, I'm going to kind of steal your thunder for today, your normal spot. I'm going to say thanks to Melissa, because I've seen Melissa lots of times up here. Obviously, she's passionate about the work she's doing. I appreciate you. And I want to say thank you to Joanne Weaver for serving a long time. And I know you're super passionate about soil and water. I want to shout out to my cousin Leonard Coring, who I believe has served on the Soil and Water Board for 50 years. Am I correct?
You are correct.
50 years. And I can remember years and years ago, 45 years ago, Leonard was an advocate and believing in organic farming. And everybody kind of in the neighborhood kind of thought he was silly. But he was 40 years ahead of everybody else. Now you go into Costco or you go in and it's all organic. So Leonard was ahead of his time, and I wish he was here. He's done an excellent job. So a shout out to all you guys for the excellent work that you do. You know, I think sometimes we take water for granted because we have so much of it here. And if you were down in Arizona or some of these places where they don't have much water, it's like really precious, but we have to make sure that we continue to protect it. I know that living on South Long Lake and being involved now somewhat and going to the meetings with the lake associations, there's a lot of passionate people. They want to keep the lakes nice, and so thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Coring. Any other questions for
Mr. Chair?
Mr. Lundkey?
You know, the whole thing that I think was really important is way back when I was sitting as the sitting mayor of Jenkins, I served on this watershed. And for me, it was more about education. But being on that advisory part of it, I was able to bring some stuff in there because I didn't understand the importance of the chloride and the management of the chloride. And I've actually gone ahead and become salt certified just because I realize the importance of it. And those have been put in the plan because of those advisory we have, whether those advisors be from a township, a lake association, a city, and just to make a point, the city of Jenkins has 15 feet of lakeshore. So it isn't a lake-centric township. And one of the things, as I've also been now involved in the Crow Wing Plan, I'm beginning to realize that, you know, it's not about the lakes, it's about the quality of the water, and what impacts the quality of that water is not just the lake shore. It's everything that encompasses around that. That's I think one of these things on these plans that I think really helps the general public to understand that it is the education that we are the stewards of that water. And in Minnesota, especially in our area and a few of the other counties that I consider lake-centric, we're almost getting to a point where we're loving our lakes to death. And the maintenance, because we're using the water so much, our maintenance has to increase. And for it to come to a county levy, it's almost impossible. It has to be what you are doing at Soil and Water. It has to be what the Bowser is doing with the support of that in order to make that happen. Otherwise, we will end up, as southern parts of the state have, what color green is your water going to be in July? And I think that what we're doing is very, very important, and not just for the enjoyment of the people, but it is the economic engine. Our county runs on water. We're one of the counties in Minnesota that runs on water. So I've been signing up for that back, I don't know how many years ago, 2019 or whatever it was. I had no clue what I was stepping into by being on a one watershed, one plan, but it has taught me so much, and I appreciate all the people that were in those plans helping me, including the consultants. So that's all I had to add to that.
Thank you. Anything else? They've said everything that I would say, and I appreciate it.
Everything?
Well, on this subject, you
Okay.
know, I am open to other subjects, but thank you very much for all you do, Melissa
Thank
and
you.
Chris and Bowser. If they're online listening, thank you to them for their efforts. Next, we have Ms. Lewick coming up for the Community Living Infrastructure Grant.
Good morning, Chair Barrows and fellow commissioners. Tammy Lewick, Adult Services Manager at Community Services. And with me, I think on our agenda, it said Kara was maybe going to be presenting, but I have Rachel Zita. She is our supervisor for housing, adult mental health, and substance use disorders. And actually currently covering adult protection and our law enforcement social workers while we have someone out on leave. We decided that we thought it would be important to bring forward some of our housing work over the next 2 months. We have 2 renewal grants that are currently into the state that I'll be bringing probably back before you, most likely in June. So we just thought that it would be important to give you an update of what work we've been doing in this area. So our housing and homeless program for adult services, I kind of went back just to take a look. We received this grant in July of 21. And prior to that, looking back to 2017, 18, 19, we were serving approximately around 200 unhoused or doubled up individuals through our intake department, just within community services. In 2020, if you remember, during COVID, we were asked to do protective sheltering, and we did that. We did a hotel model. During that time, we served right around 295 people, 24 of those being families. And then since that time, we're going to step into these numbers, but when we got this grant in July of 21, it was a 2-year grant, and then we received a 2-year extension, so we didn't have to come back and bring a new grant proposal before you or a contract before you, so we got a 2-year extension. This program, we have 2 housing specialists that are funded through this program, Lisa Hamilton and Heather Santee. So we have 2 full-time positions. The grant award for the first year was $341,715, and we served 351 individuals and some families, because sometimes there's individual adults that we're working with that have kids, right? And then 277 of those were considered homeless or unhoused. And then that third and fourth year, we received $255,221, and we were allowed to use, from the first year and the second year, we were allowed to use anything we hadn't expended yet for those staffing. We just applied now. It's a competitive cycle for this Community Living Infrastructure Grant, and we should be hearing in June, and I'll be coming back before the board on that. So what is the goal of this program? Our goal is to assist people with questions and supports related to eligibility and community referrals for housing, so really specializing in what options an individual has for housing in our community. Provide housing consultation support and services to individuals with disabilities. Typically, a lot of these individuals do have some sort of disability or they're very low income. We coordinate with local community providers to work on this continuum housing services we have in our community. And we educate the community about housing disparities and raise awareness of housing issues and needs. We serve on just many different groups in the community. Our staff attend the landlord meeting to try to work through any kinds of barriers, questions, things that we can maybe assist in kind of helping our people stay housed once they get into housing. So we try to work through those issues. Rachel's going to talk just now about our last year of some of the data, and then at the end, we'll take some questions.
Go ahead. I'll hold off.
Are you sure?
Yep.
Okay. Or unless you want to ask it now. Doesn't matter.
Well, I can ask you, because you talked about you go to the landlord meetings, and I know that there's an organized one here in Brainerd. What about the other communities in the county? Because homelessness isn't
Yep,
just
for sure.
here.
Yep, correct. So currently within our county, the only one that we're aware of is the Brainerd one, and they invite people from, outside of the Brainerd area. I know they've been looking at trying to expand that, but they're the ones that are the most coordinated. But if you have other groups within the county, we'd love to get that information to participate because it's important.
We do go up to both the Lakes Area Food Shelf, a couple of them. So Lakes Area Food Shelf, we go up there and we provide our services up there. Over to Crosby, the Crosby Food Shelf is only open one night a week. And then Emily, our staff have been up there too to provide supports and services. So they are in those locations when they're open, or not every time they're open, but we are up there. So.
All right. Thanks.
All right, so thank you for allowing me to be here and share this, the information with you guys. So we're just going to share some highlights from our last annual report that we submitted for this grant. So our funding year always starts July and ends in June. So we'll be preparing our next report here shortly, but this is our last annual report. So here's just kind of a breakdown. So I broke down the numbers per quarter, but between intake and then going out to the community, like at the food shelves, trying to serve some other areas around our county, both Heather and Lisa had made 424 contacts throughout the year. And all of those contacts were for individuals who were facing some type of housing disparities. So there was some type of housing need that they were helping them with. So in Q1, so July through September, they had 97 contacts. October through December was 90. And then we always typically see a spike in Q3 and 4. So in January through March, they had 127 contacts with individuals in our community. And then for April and June, it was 110. So we always like to kind of figure out what situation they're currently in. There are many forms of homelessness or are being unhoused, and majority of the folks that Heather and Lisa have been in contact with were experiencing homelessness. So what that looks like is, they may have been utilizing shelter, hotels, a car, fish house, a storage shed. So that's what that form of homelessness looks like. And 48% of those contacts were experiencing that type of form. The prevention side, so that was about 34% of the individuals. And prevention means that they're in some type of housing, whether it's through renter or home ownership. And they're about to lose that opportunity. That's what prevention means. And then doubled up means that they don't have a permanent residency. They're just staying with a family member or a friend on a temporary basis until they can find their next stable housing option. And then we do have a group of people that just aren't willing to share kind of what situation they're in, and that's okay. So sometimes you're going to see some of those higher numbers for the unknown. Again, it kind of takes trust and build that relationship with someone before you can kind of get into some of that. But that's just kind of the breakdown of where people in our area and what type of housing they're currently in. So I always like to share data about the county of residence. I know this is a topic that a lot of people ask, and overall, the majority of the individuals that we are working with are from Crow Wing County. So we had a total of 69% that were from Crow Wing County. We had about 13% that were outside the county, and typically that's kind of within our surrounding county area. Once in a while, we'll get a few outliers from like Duluth or the Metro or something like that, but majority it's from our surrounding communities. And then just a small percentage is from out of state. Typically, when people are coming from out of state, is that they do have some family ties here. Once in a while, some people are just passing through, but if they're coming from out of state, it's because they have some connection to our community, whether it's friends or family or they grew up here. And then again, we have kind of another percentage, that 12% of unknown. Again, some people just aren't willing to share that information, and that's okay with us. We just started reporting some more information about age demographic because I think this area can be kind of a big misconception. A lot of times when people are thinking of individuals who are experiencing homelessness or unhoused, it's like more of the younger generation or early 20s, 30s, when in fact what we're seeing, a newer trend, is individuals kind of in their 30s, 40s, 50s, are kind of that peak in that type of thing. So the fastest growing age demographic is our 50 plus that are experiencing homelessness, and they typically are getting that. This is their first time experiencing that. So they've been stable pretty much their whole lives, and then something happened where they were kind of in some type of housing instability. Retirement is just not. Some people just can't live off retirement, and that's one of the biggest challenge or biggest reasons why we hear that in that category. And then just a breakdown of our service outcomes. So what Heather and Lisa do every time they are in contact with somebody is we try to help them with some type of connection. So the largest percentage is that housing consultation service. So they're talking with that individual to figure out what is the best housing situation for them, and we're trying to get them connected to some type of housing option or work on a housing plan. Sometimes, most of the time we don't have an immediate option for them, so we have to work on a plan. Like step 1, we're going to do this, step 2, so it does take some time, but that's what that service component looks like. And then the next highest one is community referrals. So typically when we're referring out to the community, it's more for financial assistance. So here internally, Crow Wing County doesn't have a lot of financial assistance for first month's rent or deposit. We look to our community partners to help out with that because we have some partners in the area that have more financial assistance for them. And then just a small percentage, a total of 6% for crisis services and treatment. So we're helping them get connected to that service. And then 21% is not reported. Typically what happens in that is the option we're trying to work with them isn't meeting the need that they want right now. Like for today, for example, we know the weather is not great outside. So if someone comes in, they're like, I need housing today. And I'll be like, well, we don't have it. That can be very disheartening. And sometimes it's hard to work on a plan with somebody when all they're thinking about in this moment right now is, I want to get out of the rain because I'm cold. And you want to work on a housing plan with me. I'm not there yet. So that's kind of what that looks like. And I just kind of want to share a little case study with you guys. So this is this is just one individual situation, but we have individuals in our community that fall into this category as well. So I'm going to share a case study with you on Jake's unhoused journey. So Jake, the first contact that we had with Jake was in 2016, and he was experiencing homelessness at that time. We know that he was experiencing homelessness prior to 2016, but this was the first contact that we had. And then there's this kind of a gap in that timeline, so between 2017 and 2022-ish. That should be 2020, sorry about that. So in between there, he had multiple contacts with the county, with law enforcement, with emergency services. So Jake didn't have a phone, and it was really, really hard to stay in contact with him. Like if he wasn't presenting here at the county, or if law enforcement wasn't in contact with him, we had no way to get a hold of him. So it was just kind of this revolving door for Jake, and it was very frustrating for him, for our community partners, just because it was so frequent that, he would be accessing all of these emergency services. But luckily, at the end of 2021, the Bridge on 7th opened, and Jake had a safe place to sleep for the first time in over 5 years. And every night, or for the mostly every night, he was there at the shelter. So it was pretty easy to know where he was at, and if we need to get a hold of him, you know, we could connect, you know, with him through the shelter. And then another great community service opened up in 2023. That was the Open Arms Drop-In Center. So now Jake had somewhere to go during the day. So again, if we needed to get in contact with him, we had a place that we can connect with him on. And then throughout that work, the wraparound services, so between the county, Open Arms, the Bridge on 7th, all of us were working on a coordinated plan for Jake. So we were all on the same page, getting the same message, getting things, you know, worked through. And then luckily, very, very, very happy to report that in 2025, here in the spring, he moved into his housing for the first time since who knows when. So the part that I want to highlight through this is that just the long gap between not having community services and that coordination, and then when these pieces were put into place in our community, how short of a time span it was to get Jake into safe, stable housing. And he's doing fabulous, by the way.
Mr. Chair, question for you. The age of Jake, you know, you said you met him first in 2016. Do you have an idea what his age was?
You're going to make me doing math. So currently right now, he's in his like late 40s right now. So he would have been in his 30s. Mm-hmm.
So he's in his 30s when he's experiencing homelessness.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Okay.
Correct. And prior to that, what we know, I mean, he had a job, things were going well, and then, you know, for whatever reason, there's so many reasons why people experience this type of instability in their life. So he hasn't been willing to share that information.
I was kind of shocked to see the age group. I was thinking it would probably be more youngers, but I'm amazed that that's that middle age group and what you brought up, the fact that that things have been going good, or they, you know, things were working fine, they were keeping everything together, but through whatever, through whether eviction, whether it be a house they lost through foreclosure, whatever it is, all of a sudden they're out on the streets and they had no idea they were ever going to end up there.
Correct. Yep. That's the very
That'd be pretty
common
scary
thing.
for him.
Yep, it was. Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
All right. So that's just a little highlight of our report. So now we would love to turn it over to you guys for questions or conversation.
What's the impact since the city of Brainerd decided they wouldn't allow the shelter to be open during the summer months? What's the impact that you see for our staff and for individuals that might be experiencing this homelessness?
Yep, we're going right to that part, absolutely. So what I can say from our staff is it's very hard to look someone in the eye and say, I'm sorry, I have nothing for you. Here's what you have tonight. You know, the rain and the cold. That's hard for them to do. The impact of the shelter closing is just, again, we're going back to that 2016, 2020 with Jake's situation. It's incredibly difficult to find them, and it's incredibly difficult to keep moving forward when we don't know where they're at, and we can't continue to work on some type of safe, stable option for them. So they have seen a decrease in, you know, the number of contacts of individuals that they have been working with, you know, when the shelter was open. We just don't know where some of them are.
I'd also just say that when we first partnered together with many community partners to work towards developing the warming shelter, and Bridges of Hope stepped into that. At that time, we were really focused on trying to create a safe, warm place for people in the winter, and I know that's been a question of, well, why now a year-round shelter? And I think when we started that, we didn't realize that every May we were throwing people into kind of a crisis, because now where were they going to go? You know, now what do I do? I think the shelter ended with, they've been averaging from January through April, 26 individuals that were at the shelter every night. And so 26 individuals are sitting there asking, you know, like, where do I go? And then the ordinances that have come about have just, I think, when we think about where do people where will they go when they leave? Many times they are camping. Some of the things that Rachel mentioned, they find a shelter somewhere, an empty, vacant shelter, a fish house. I mean, and they do want to try to stay close to resources in the community, such as our soup kitchen and the Open Arms Day Center that they could go to during the day. We've been just reminding people that of the ordinances, but we also have been, trying to help people have some shelter, like Rachel pointed to the rain today. And in the last 2 weeks, we've had really hot weather in the 90s, and we've been really chill, cold here in the evenings, and we've had rain. So it has kind of thrown all of us into, I think, crisis mode every spring, which was, I think, why we had thought that doing the year-round shelter would maybe be a good thing, so that we could stay connected to these individuals. For us, staying connected to them and continuing to work on their housing plan is what really truly gets them into ongoing housing, stable ongoing housing. I think on average, I was looking back at some of our numbers, but it takes us about 50 days at least to even try to get somebody into some sort of housing, and that's probably a little bit more of a temporary housing, like one of our housing support homes, something like that. As you see here, it took us a couple years, to really get Jake into his own apartment and work through all those things. So I don't know if that answers your question, but.
It's frustrating, excuse me, geez, the printer lopped off a finger there. It's the chair. It's frustrating for me, and most people up here don't know this, but I was homeless for a year myself and lived in a car through the winter months, through the summer months. It's not a nice experience. I was lucky enough to have a job that I kept during that time. I was able to have a little bit of money, but not very much money. But I slept in my car, and when you try to do that in January when it's 10 below, that car doesn't stay warm for very long. And so it's not a fun experience, but go to summer and you have these temperature differences and the wetness, it's just as miserable as any other time of the year. And in fact, I would argue that it's worse because now I'm sopping wet. I've got clothes I can't go to the laundromat because I don't have the money to dry them. Couldn't clean them anyway. It's a miserable experience. And if anybody thinks that mosquitoes are friendly in the summer, they are terribly wrong. The gnats, everything is impactful in your life and makes you not want to be here. I'll say that bluntly. It's a terrible experience. And for this, and I'm going to go on a limb here, I'm sorry, Administrator, but you'll probably get a lot of calls on this, but to shut this shelter down when it operates extremely well. Bridges of Hope has done a terrific job down there, and you're not changing the number of beds that are available. You're not, the minimal cost that the police department has in their involvement down there is really nothing. They do it all winter long. I would guess there's even probably less in the summer, but that's my own observation. I just think, and the police chief can shut it down at any time he thinks that it's out of control down there, which we haven't seen in what number of years they've been there? 3 years?
3 seasons.
3 years. And you can't operate on a 1-year license anyway. Your donors aren't going to give money for a 1-year operation. So I don't see why they're doing what they're doing. These are human beings, and I heard a person last night at their meeting talk about, we take better care of pets. We call them and put them in a shelter. We won't put humans in a shelter. That is just absolutely wrong. I'll keep my mouth shut now. I'm getting a little worked up here. So any other questions, observations?
I got questions.
Commissioner Lee, it better be along my line, okay?
Good luck with that.
Okay.
2016, you said with Jake, prefaced it was a job loss. Did he find employment anytime between 2016 and 2025?
He had stints here and there, but again, through his journey, it was really difficult to maintain a job because he didn't know where he was going to sleep from night to night and getting there too. So Jake also did not have transportation. So there were a lot of barriers that he had every single day trying to get to a job. But he definitely wants to work and still does.
Okay, so that was my next question,
Yeah.
and apparently he's not working now?
Not at this moment, but he is seeking employment.
Commissioner Lee, do you need a truck driver?
Yeah.
Well, it's funny you say that because there is a program someone out of the East Metro that actually has a program for homeless where they'll train them on how to drive a semi and get them their CDL and put them to work, so.
Oh,
Thank you. Any other questions, observations? I thank you. You'll let us know about the grant,
Yep,
whether we get it or not.
yep,
Very good.
okay,
We'll see you in June.
thank you.
all right, thank you.
All right, next up is a DNR land acquisition. Christine Reese, is that how you say your name?
Rice.
Rice? I knew I was close.
Started with an R, that was
I was
pretty
in,
good.
I was in the right alphabet, that's all I can say. But thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you for having
And if
us.
the gentleman wants to introduce himself?
Yeah, my name is Joel Lemberg. I'm the Bacchus Area Forest Supervisor for the Division of Forestry, so,
You are, huh, Joe?
yes, I am.
Yeah. We've got to know each other over the years, that's why,
A little bit, yeah.
a little bit.
First off, is everybody aware of the Minnesota Forest Heritage Project, or Minnesota Heritage Forest Project? Yes, okay. So, Potlatch, which is now Potlatch Deltic, owned a large, hundreds of thousands of acres in the state of Minnesota. The Conservation Fund kind of got together. They were kind of selling it off as they could to private landowners, but the Conservation Fund put together a proposal and purchased all of that land. And the Conservation Fund, their main goal is to keep managed land public instead of making it go private. So they purchased that land and they offered up that land to some of the Native Indian reservations, counties, and then we came in the state after that. So there's a proposal put together, correct me if I'm wrong, using outdoor heritage funds. And in March of '23, we came to the board seeking a letter of approval, which you gave to us. And now at this time, because some of the wildlife lands are using RIM matching funds, I think that's the correct term.
That's correct.
As a result, we came back seeking a resolution to proceed with that purchase.
There's two properties you're purchasing, is that right?
Correct. So the original letter of support included an additional parcel in Fairfield Township, which we are no longer seeking.
Correct.
So you'll notice a change in the map. So the map that went along with that letter does not have the parcel up in Fairfield Township. If you want to go to the zoomed in map, it's a little bit more helpful. Yeah. So there's about 265 acres on the north side of Sorensen Road that are proposed to be a state wildlife management area. And that's primarily our interest in that property is adjacency to Spider Lake. That's a shallow lake that we've surveyed over the years and has some good waterfowl, aquatic vegetation and waterfowl use. So providing access potentially to that lake and being able to manage it for waterfowl is our interest there.
The forestry lands are in green up there, and you can see they butt up to both a county parcel and a state parcel, DNR forestry parcel. Number one, they're highly productive pine plantations for most of it, and it also gives us access into our parcel and into the county for that matter.
They were here today just to answer questions. We'll have to come back to the county board to seek that resolution that Joel mentioned. So if you had questions about these proposed acquisitions that we can help answer today.
Mr. Gordy?
How many acres is it again?
A total of 543 or 43.
And then these would be eligible for payments?
Correct.
And if I recall correctly, I heard the legislature, the AIS and the PILT payments were on a chopping block, but then they're not on a chopping block now. Am I correct on that?
That's my understanding.
That's my understanding, okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I guess I don't have any issue.
Mr. Chair?
The only issue is if you can put a board in on my dam down there on
On the Division of Forestry.
Wildlife. You'll find the hydrologist.
Commissioner Lubke?
Yeah, these lands then will be forest managed, and you will be managing the timber on those lands as a DNR? That'll be,
The green lands will be,
the
yes.
green lands will
Yep.
be. The rest will be just conservation then?
No, I mean, we, on state wildlife management areas, we manage the timber on those lands, but the focus is on creating wildlife habitat.
Okay.
So we will be
creating habitat.
working on, so most of the proposed upland habitat on the wildlife management areas are pine plantations, which is not the best for wildlife habitat, so we would be working to create better habitat there.
And a question for Joel. None of these are school trust lands?
No.
Commissioner Lee, did you have a question?
No, that kind of answered my question. I'm good now.
Okay. I don't see
Yeah, we're gonna get our bill
consensus
payments.
to bring that resolution forward.
Have a resolution ready, if you could forward it to us.
Okay,
Put it on the agenda.
perfect.
Perfect.
All
Thank you
right.
so much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Great.
Short and sweet. You had to sit through a lot of others.
We like
A
that.
little lighter subject too. so.
You don't wanna go out in the woods anyway today, do you?
Not
No.
really.
No.
I only get to go out in the woods when, like, you call or somebody.
Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you
Joel.
very
Nice
much.
seeing you again.
Good seeing you.
Anything else?
All we have today, Commissioner.
All right. We are adjourned.